This is a follow-up to Adam Walks Around episode 36, Joshua Tree Mystery, which explored the disappearance of hiker Bill Ewasko. On February 8, 2022, human remains were found in Joshua Tree National Park, along with a backpack and a wallet that contained an ID bearing Ewasko's name. However, as of the release of this video in January 2023, we could not locate any official identification of the remains by the San Bernardino County Coroner's Office. Welcome back. Yes, this is Adam. In case you're wondering, it is the same guy that you've been watching on Adam Walks Around. This is what I look like now, so get used to it. As you can see, we are no longer in Southeast Asia, but the deserts of the United States. Through a sequence of events I won't get into right now, I am back in the US for a short period, and we are going to pick up the thread of one of our previous episodes, Joshua Tree Mystery. Bill Ewasko's remains were found here in Joshua Tree, not far from where I'm standing. Today, we are going to retrace his last steps, see if we can shed any further light on how he came to be in a place that was so unlikely that searchers, including myself, spent years combing these mountains and failed to find him. And today, as we explore what happened and hopefully try to shed a little more light on a mystery that has intrigued people for the last 10 years, we also need to remember that this was a human tragedy, and we'll try to do so as respectfully as we can. With me today is Jen Carno. You might remember her back from episode 35, I think. Anyway, this is a good time to remind you all, if you're going to be exploring the back country, let somebody know where you're going, and if possible, hike with a pal. That's what we're doing today. As we make our way into the Joshua Tree back country, let's review the story of Bill Ewasko. Bill was a 65-year-old veteran and avid outdoorsman who flew from Georgia to California in June 2010 with a long wish list of Joshua Tree National Park hiking destinations. On Thursday, June 24, 2010, Bill set out on the first day of his adventure. We know that on the way from his rented condo in the Palm Springs area to the park, that he made several phone calls, including one to his fiancée indicating he planned to be out of the park by 5 p.m. He did not give his itinerary, although his fiancée thought he might be going to a remote destination called Carey's Castle. His fiancée tried to dissuade him going there, but Bill gave no other indication of his plans. This was the last time anyone that we know of saw or spoke to Bill Ewasko. After Bill failed to contact his fiancée that evening, a search was instigated the following day, but due to the vagueness of his destination, the vastness of the park, and some poor observation by a ranger, his car was not found until late the following afternoon, Saturday. There was no sign of a struggle, and the case of water in the trunk only had 2 bottles of water missing. A full-scale search was instituted Sunday morning, and at dawn that day came the last trace of Bill Ewasko. A brief ping from his cell phone was logged as being 10.6 miles from a cell tower in Yucca Valley, placing Bill's location on a radial line passing through a large ravine known as Smithwater Canyon, where there was little or no cell reception. This area was so far north of where Bill would be expected to go on a day hike that it was initially disregarded by searchers. A full-scale search and rescue effort lasting 9 days failed to find any trace of Bill other than a bandana found on a ridge similar to a kind Bill was known to wear. One of the original searchers, a man named Tom Mahood, who had already had success as a hiking detective clearing up the mystery of the Death Valley Germans, decided to keep searching for Bill on his own. Mr. Mahood posted his search tracks and blogs on his website and invited others to take part. In 2013, I took up that challenge, joining the search and making 20 visits to Joshua Tree over the course of the next 5 years. I studied the case, posted blogs, and made my own theories. Many now proven wrong, but a few of the later ones now seemingly correct. Now, despite what certain authors might tell you, there's nothing inherently mysterious about a hiker going missing or an extensive search failing to find them. This actually happens all the time. The wilderness is vast and a body is easy to miss. What made Bill's disappearance so puzzling was the timeline the geography, the evidence that Bill planned only a short hike, and most of all, that puzzling phone ping. From Bill's itinerary and the location of his car, it's assumed that his main destination was a place called Quail Mountain, and the area between there and the car was the focus of the initial search. It's known that Bill started his hike no earlier than 10:40 a.m. Thursday morning. June 24th was one of the hottest days of the month, with a peak temperature of 108 degrees Fahrenheit in nearby Palm Springs. Depending on the route, one of which we retraced in episode 36, the pace and the effect of the heat, it would have taken Bill at least 3 hours to get to the summit of Quail Mountain, putting him there no earlier than 1:30 p.m. In order to leave the park by 5, Bill would have needed to turn around and go back to his car almost immediately. Indeed, given the heat and his apparent lack of water, this was the only logical thing to do. But somehow, by accident or design, Bill seemingly continued far north of Quail Mountain and away from his car. Why and how that happened when the direction back should have been clear from his vantage point is the first and biggest mystery. Now, at the time of this filming, 2 months after Bill's remains had been found, my goal was to shed some light on these questions. For the first mystery of how and why Bill had gone north from Quail Mountain, there were 2 theories to check out. Tom Hood's theory had always been, and still was, that Bill had been tempted by seemingly easy terrain to try an ambitious loop from Quail Mountain to a water source in Smithwater Canyon. My theory was that Bill was trying to circle back to the car through a nearby canyon that was on his itinerary list, named Johnny Lang Canyon, but drifted into bad terrain just north of his route. Both theories have serious flaws, which we will discuss later. After this filming, a Reddit user suggested a third theory, based on some early discarded ideas of mine and of others, that at first seemed kind of crazy, but on further examination, though Tom disagrees, I think this theory might be the most plausible of all. And if it is correct, it means Bill's struggle to save himself was an epic tale of heroism that came heartbreakingly close to success. We will cover all this at the end. Right now, Jen and I are headed to the mouth of a canyon north of Quail Mountain to kick the tires on my own original theory that Bill got into trouble looping back through Johnny Lang and was funneled north through a canyon into Quail Wash. We'll be going through that canyon looking for traces of Bill, then heading north to Smithwater Canyon, and from there follow the path where Tom and I both agree Bill walked his final steps. In making today's video, I want to acknowledge the full cooperation and support of Tom Hood, who was the primary force behind the 10 years long crowdsourced effort to find Bill Ewasko. Tom and I have slightly different theories about how Bill came to be on this side of the mountain. Tom believes that Bill came down over these mountains to get to Smithwater Canyon, hopefully to find water and do a loop to the California Riding and Hiking Trail, which is several miles west of here. And that he probably was injured coming down the steep face of Smithwater Canyon. My feeling is that it's more likely that Bill might have been trying to do a loop back to his car over in this direction, and that he either got trapped coming down or got injured and was funneled down into this broad area here. We both agree that he wound up down there near the junction of Quail Wash and Smithwater Canyon and proceeded upwards through here where he finally expired over in that direction. What we're going to try to do today is see the perspective from where he would have come out from these 2 routes, see if there's anything there that gives us a clue as to which way he might have gone, see if there's any trace perhaps of where he might have spent the night, anything like that, anything that would help shed some light on how he wound up so far from his car and in such an odd place. Up there you will see where I'm pointing the mouth of a canyon that runs down from Quail Mountain. He would have been funneled down here through this canyon. What I want to do is go up into the canyon, see if there's any evidence of this having happened, and also look out from the mouth of the canyon towards where we are now to see if it would have been clear to Bill from there that the way out was through this broad plain that we're walking down right now. Because if he did go this way, the path he chose would have been to go up through there towards the mouth of Smithwater Canyon. and away from safety. So I want to see if from that vantage point that would have seemed like a logical thing for him to do. The direct sunlight is really gonna hit you. And this is something that when Bill was out here in the middle of July, it's April now and it's actually unseasonably cool. It's only about 50 degrees Fahrenheit right now, but already the direct sun coming down I'm starting to feel it. So now we're gonna walk up the canyon and see if we can find anything that helps tell us if this is what actually happened or not. Now, just to play devil's advocate, another point against my theory that he came up this wash is that searchers did search this wash. I'm not sure exactly when, but I think it was a day or two after. If he came this way, he would have come, and they didn't observe any footprints. And as you can see our footprints. They're not super obvious, but you know, they're visible. However, this wash is so wide, I can see how footprints could have been missed. So as you can see, both up here and also down in the wash there, the going is pretty easy. We're going a little bit uphill. For Bill, it would have been a little bit downhill. So even assuming he was injured, which is very likely, but he wasn't so injured that he was immobile. We know that from where he passed away. This certainly would have been something he should have been able to navigate. And again, you can see there. And also interesting to see, we didn't walk there. There are old footprints. I don't know if those are animal prints or human prints, but it is possible that if he came this way and searchers came up, it might have blended in with what was already there. They might not have necessarily noticed that he had come this way. See, one of the big questions to me is, was he able to fashion some kind of a walking stick? Because it's known that he didn't usually carry one, and he would have needed one in this terrain, especially that he was probably injured. And there are not many things here, as you can see, scrub brush, rocks, things like that. There aren't a lot of things you can use to make a walking stick. Like most of the wood is like this, really flimsy and twisted. So that's another thing that could have slowed him down. If he got injured, and it could have easily taken him a whole day to find something suitable to use as a walking stick, and he would have needed it. One of the things I want to see when we get to the place where he passed is if there's anything around there that looks like a walking stick. So now we're moving further up the wash towards Quail Mountain. This is the reverse of the way that Bill might have come. And as you can see, the terrain is still not too bad. There are a couple of places that were nasty and would have taken some time for an injured person to get over. But like what we've got coming up here, for example. But in the main, it's not that bad. It's not any worse than the other possible route, Smithwater Canyon. It could go some way to explaining, however, why it took Bill so long to get out of the situation that he was in Quail Mountain and get down to where he hoped he'd find safety.
The second mystery is where Bill was for the 2.5 days before his cell phone went off. Moving north from Quail Mountain, there is ample cell phone reception, so if that was his route, something must have happened to Bill in the cell phone dead zone that surrounds Smithwater Canyon, which is approximately 3 miles north of Quail Mountain, and already very close to the radial line of 10.6 miles from the cell tower where Bill's phone went off. Because no calls went out between Thursday afternoon and Sunday morning, Bill apparently had spent 3 nights and 2 days in a very small area. Given the bad terrain on the south side of Smithwater Canyon, it is easy to imagine Bill becoming immobilized.
But after Tom Mahood, myself, and others extensively combed the area, it began to look like somehow, after being stuck there for so long, he was able to be on the move again. Indeed, that almost had to be true, because in the immediate vicinity of Smithwater Canyon, there is no cell reception whatsoever. Wherever the phone went off was outside the small area where Bill initially seemingly got bogged down.
Something else to consider is that where you find trees like this and that kind of brush in the desert, that often indicates underground water. And since this area is called Quail Spring, and there is a spring marked on the map, although it's clearly marked dry, it is just possible that this might have also attracted Bill in this direction. Though I do have a minor quibble with, I don't want to say quibble, but what Tom Mahood, the main searcher, believes is that Bill went to Smithwater Canyon, 3 miles north of Quail Mountain, in order to find water. And this just, I've always had trouble with this because it just seems like such a foolhardy thing to do for a small amount of water. And I don't think he would have done that for Quail Spring either, because there was no water here. But once he was in trouble, I can definitely see him striking out for either destination in search of water, but I don't really think that would have led him over North Quail Mountain. And that's really the big question. Why did he keep going once he got to Quail Mountain? So now I would guess we're a mile and a half north of Quail Mountain, which is right there. And you can kind of see what I think might have occurred. So according to Tom Mahood's theory, Bill would have proceeded from here to go over this area and down into Smithwater Canyon, which is way over there. What I think might have happened is that, again, he might have been trying to do a traverse over to Johnny Lang Canyon, which was another place on his itinerary. He seems to have been a very list-oriented guy, so it might have been tempting to cross it off his list, especially as the 2 other places that he had listed with Johnny Lang Canyon that he wanted to visit as a group were in a different part of the park. So I think what he might have been trying to do is go over this way. And Johnny Lang Canyon is over there. But you can see there's a fairly deep crevasse right there. What if he got stuck up in there? Possibly injured or couldn't, got in a situation where he couldn't move. It would have inevitably funneled him down through this canyon and out to the place where we just were. And there's also another side canyon coming up through here. So I suppose there's another scenario where he might have been going down that way towards Smithwater Canyon and came down this way. But just from a psychological standpoint, I have an easier time believing he would have cycled back around this way. It would have been an easier circle back to his car, because going to Smithwater would have taken him 3 miles or so further north, 2 or 3 miles further north, away from his car and back around. It would have been a much longer loop to a place that we knew about. It was on one of his lists, but it wasn't on his schedule for hikes that he was going to do on his trip to Joshua Tree this time. And the 2 places that he seems to have visited on this trip, which is Quail Mountain and Lost Horse Mine, were the next ones on his list after Carey's Castle, which is a place he had originally intended to go apparently and decided not to go to. So this is as far south as we're going to go up this canyon towards Quail Mountain. We're going to backtrack now on what would have been Bill's route if this is the way he came. I saw 3 choke points that would have been difficult for him to get across, but the rest of it is fairly easy terrain, you know, so rocks and stuff like that. But considering the amount of time elapsed, I definitely think he could have come this way. So all along I've been looking for places like this rock overhang where Bill might have taken shelter. It makes sense that he probably moved during the dusk and sunrise hours and took shelter during the height of day, which means he would have needed something that afforded him shade from the sunlight. I haven't seen anything quite big enough to suit that purpose. That doesn't mean it's not here. There's plenty of rock formations on either side. But in terms of candidates for him to have bivouacked, not seeing that. And as you can see, this is the route back down the wash for Bill. It's when I say it's easy terrain, I don't mean it's easy. Obviously, you got to do a little boulder hopping and stuff like that. But what I mean is it's not super choked with brush, and the further you go, the easier it gets. So with due time and some sort of a walking stick, I think he could have made it through here. And this is one of the rougher sections, actually. The other parts are a little easier. I have to say, though, this is easier terrain than if he'd gone through Smith Water, which is the other possible way he came through.
Adam, look, somebody burned this wood here. Somebody had like a fire of some kind. You can see it's kind of ashy.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's...
You see that little chunk?
Yeah.
So somebody was here and burned something. Yeah,
and it's a logical place to do a fire. You got a little saddle on the rocks. You're away from the brush. That's really interesting. I'm trying to think of who would have done that. There's no sign of burn elsewhere. Let's look around, see if there's any trace of someone having spent the night here. Yeah, who else would be building a fire out here? I don't think it's, I mean, it's not a fireplace, but it's a really good place to do a controlled burn if you don't want to start a brush fire. But, you know, if it was a regular camper, you'd expect to see a circle of rocks, the whole deal. So let's back engineer this. So we've got somebody that's got a fire here. Means it's night. Flat area over here. Okay. Here's our footsteps from earlier. You can sure camp here. And if he's sleeping at night, he doesn't need shade. Yeah, maybe. I wonder. Now, a little further away, here's a pretty charred log. Now, does that mean there was a burn through here? And just there's hardly any evidence of it anymore? Or did something else happen here? I don't really know enough about how desert fires work. I mean, this to me looks more like it happened in like a brush fire or something. Yeah. But so I mean, that could have also been from the same brush fire. But no, I think you're right.
Those were like different sized logs and twigs. And stuff.
Yeah, it looked like someone gathered up some crap.
No, human being put that there for sure.
Yeah, let's follow the trail, see where it leads us. Yeah, from here on in, it's fairly open. It's not too bad. So this is the decision point for Bill coming up. He should have gone that way. If he was here, he went that way. One thing that's not obvious from the map is the way up there is uphill, way there is downhill. That might have been an influence on his decision-making process. So, if Bill had come this way, the question for him at this point would be, does he go left or does he go right? Keeping in mind that it might have been nighttime when he got here, since he might well have been traveling at night. But if he came this way, he must have made the decision to go that way. And one of the things I wanted to see coming here is if that would have been a logical decision, putting myself in Bill's shoes. And it's really hard to say. If he had gone this way, he would have gotten to the road in a fairly short time, maybe, and depending on if he was injured, an hour, several hours. It's only about 3 miles through fairly easy terrain. If he'd kept going up that wash, he also would have eventually gotten to Joshua Tree Village. But what he did is he went up that way and at some point turned into those mountains and unfortunately perished before he got to the road.
Overwhelmed and exhausted.
Yeah, so
and you have limited choices.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, do you go this way, which is the way out, or do you go this way? I mean, what do you think?
It's hard to tell depending on what the lighting conditions are.
Yeah.
But if I'm delirious and exhausted and I have limited options, I mean, looking at this with my more, you know, cognitive mind right now, I'd probably go that way.
And why would you do that?
It just looks like it's gonna end up out on a road somewhere.
Yeah.
Whereas that looks like it's going into mountains and you can't see the road.
You can't, yeah, and that's the thing. Like one of the things that that makes Tom Mahood think this isn't the right way to go is that the exit route would have been obvious from here, but I'm not so sure that it is, because you can see you're going uphill to those mountains. You can't see the road.
Yeah.
Down here you're going downhill, and you can see a clear area back there, but you can't see what's behind there. It's like what's behind door number 1. It looks like there's nothing there. There might be something there.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, the question is, how much did he know where he was? We don't know what kind of maps he carried with him. That would be a great thing to know.
And he came from a different direction than we came from.
Yeah, exactly. He's coming from back behind us, you know.
Direction, so we sort of have a sense of where things are too.
Yeah, exactly. I have to say, for my own, you know, this, of course, this supports my theory, but so that makes me biased. But I don't think it's all that unlikely that he would have jogged over there coming out of this wash. I think that part of it checks out. I don't think he would have naturally gone up there. Okay, now we're going up Quail Wash, headed towards the Quail Spring, Smithwater Canyon area, and as you can see, it is the easiest possible terrain. Also, another thing to consider is if he's traveling at night, this would have been the way to go, going down a wash. Otherwise, he just could have plowed into anything in the brush. This makes a lot of sense to me. Up there, I do want to note that I can just barely make out cars moving. So if he came through here during the day and was looking up there, it's conceivable he could have seen that there was a road up there. But if it was at night, interesting question, would there have been any cars there? You know, 4 or 5 in the morning, would there have been any to see? I don't know how much traffic there is in the middle of the night of the park. I'm not even sure if they let people in. But that is an interesting question, because if, you know, if there were cars going by at night, you know, and he should have been able to see the lights from here. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I don't know if there would be any if it's 3 or 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning.
Yeah.
The wash starts to funnel right down to the mouth of Smithwater Canyon. Like down there is the first place where we're pretty certain we know where he was. This all checks out so far. This would have been a natural course of travel for him. Those rocks in the distance kind of attract the eye. Let's go take a quick look at those. Now, as we approach these rocks, we hit a trail, and more significantly, a trail sign with an arrow pointing on it. However, I can verify in 2010, these signs were not here. They're new. So we know that Bill was somewhere either at the mouth of Smithwater Canyon or a little further northeast at about 6:30 Sunday morning. And if he was traveling at night to that point, and it seems logical that he would have been, it makes sense that he would have used a wash, since it would have been a clear path of travel during the nighttime hours. And as you can see, it's not a straight shot to that point, but we're going to be able to follow the wash all the way there. It makes a lot of sense to me that he might have come this way if he was traveling at nighttime. So now we are at the junction of Quail Wash and the mouth of Smithwater Canyon back there. According to Tom Mahood's theory, Bill would have come to grief coming down the rugged slope of the south side of Smithwater Canyon. And having gone up and down that slope multiple times, I can tell you, if that's the way he went and he didn't have a hiking pole, or even if he did, it's very easy to believe. And regardless of whether Tom's or my theory is correct, we are fairly sure that he got to this point, and from here on out, we have a pretty good idea of what happened.
And that brings us to the third mystery. Where exactly did the phone go off? As there were only a few places along the 10.6-mile radial line where such a connection was possible. Here, at least, we finally have an answer. It seems to agree with the last theory I formed about the case before I abandoned the search and moved to Asia. But the question I had then was, if Bill's phone went off that close to civilization, why wasn't he rescued? This is a question that at least we can partially answer on our trip today, thanks to Tom Mahood putting those pieces together for us and giving the information we need to retrace those final steps and see why Bill made the fateful choices he did. Now, this strange fact set, coupled with a years-long unsuccessful search, spawned many theories, such as foul play or self-disappearance might be distorting the picture, or that Bill had gone to a different destination altogether. The most commonly accepted alternate theory was simply that the cell phone information was wrong. With the discovery of Bill's remains, we now know that none of this was true. Bill was a lost hiker, nothing more, nothing less, and the phone distance information was correct. But this actually deepens the mystery, because without an alternate theory to help us explain away these weird facts, we're left with Bill inexplicably moving north from Quail Mountain, being hung up in a small area for 2.5 days, then somehow moving out of that area, using his cell phone to briefly connect to the tower, and then moving even further out of that area. In fact, even though our hike today will answer some questions about why Bill made the decisions he did in his final hours, they make the question of how Bill got there and what happened to him before then even more perplexing.
So with the discovery of Bill's body in February, it puts to rest some of the more out there theories like he met with foul play or staged his own disappearance. And I have to admit, for a couple of years, I thought that's what had happened, that Bill might have engineered this. And there are reasons, besides me being a conspiracy theorist, which I'm not, to have thought this. The facts that we had didn't really seem to make any sense. With Smithwater Canyon basically coinciding with that radial line, there wouldn't be any reception there. And there were actually only a few places around here where a cell could conceivably connect to the tower. What caused me to change my mind back from the self-disappearance angle to him being a lost hiker was I realized I had gotten one thing wrong about the information. And that is that search parties which did come through this area came through later than I thought. I had thought if Bill had come through this area where there is a spot that you can connect the tower, that searchers would have found him, but they actually came through later in the day. Once I realized that, I started to focus my efforts around this area, thinking that Bill had come through, possibly from the canyon we just came down, and had gotten lost up there somewhere. It now appears that this was the right answer. So why didn't I find him? Well, one of the problems I and Tom Mahood had with looking over there is it's so close to the road, we didn't understand why he wouldn't have been found. So when I looked around this area, I looked on the side of the wash furthest from the road. On my very last search, I did start getting into the right area and I was moving in the right direction, but by that time I'd already moved to Asia, and I figured that if he was up in there, it was a lot of ground to cover, and it was so close to the road, eventually he would be found, which is exactly what happened. But the bottom line is, Tom, through a Bayesian analysis that was done around 2018, and myself through that theory, both had indications he might be where he was found.
Indeed, the area was on my mind in this unused bit of footage from episode 36.
Now, we are coming to the area where, if Bayesian analysis conducted in 2018 is correct, is the highest probability where Bill Ewasko might now be found, down that way. There's one area that I think we ought to look at.
That was, in fact, just about exactly where Bill was found. I briefly considered filming the episode in that area, but I didn't.
It was just so far-fetched to us. How could he have gotten so close to the road and not made it? And that's what we're going to look at now. So from here on in, we have the grim task of retracing what we are fairly sure were Bill's final steps. Making a mad grasp towards safety and almost painfully close to making it.
This is an appropriate place to pause our story. In part 2, we'll follow Bill's final trail, a sad task that nonetheless made me fully appreciate the tenacity and strength of will of a man I spent 5 years of my life searching for, but perhaps am just starting to know now. And also that made me rethink one of the most basic assumptions about this case. With that in mind, we'll revisit in depth the theories discussed at the beginning of this video and fully explore the third outlier theory that, on closer examination, might offer an explanation for the aspects of Bill's disappearance that baffled us then and still baffle us now. Thanks everyone for your patience waiting for these videos to be produced, especially our patrons and the supporters of the channel. I'll be back soon.